My neighbor intercepted me at the elevator with a look I'll never forget. After 48 years of reading people's faces as an art teacher, I know when someone's about to change your life with words they can barely contain. Isabella Carmen Jimenez said her silver hair pulled into an elegant bun that matched her reputation as the most respected resident of Coral Terrace Estates. Do you know who enters your penthouse every Tuesday afternoon while you're teaching? My coffee nearly slipped from my hand. I laughed nervously, the sound echoing in the marble lobby of our luxury building in Coral Gables. What are you talking about, Carmen? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I've seen a young woman using your key, every Tuesday like clockwork, same time around 2 p.m. At first I thought perhaps you hired new household help, but her eyes, sharp as a former judge's, should be locked with mine. I recognized her. It's your son's wife, Valentina. My mind immediately rejected the information. Val had a key, of course. Mateo had asked if she could have one to occasionally pick up his things when they visited Miami from Tampa. Raphael and I had agreed she was family. I'm sure it's nothing, I said, trying to sound dismissive. Probably just picking something up for Mateo. Carmen's perfectly lined lips tightened. Every Tuesday for the past month, always when you're teaching your afternoon art classes, and she stays for exactly 20 minutes. She placed a hand on my arm. Isabella, in my 72 years, I've learned that patterns matter. Watch closely. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, and I stepped inside, my legs suddenly wooden. Thank you, Carmen, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'll look into it. As the doors closed, I caught her final words. Just be careful, querida. Some truths hurt more than ignorance. Back in our penthouse, I stood in the entryway studying the space I'd called home for 15 years. The open-concept living area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay. The custom kitchen where I'd prepared countless family dinners. The hallway leading to our bedroom where framed photos chronicled our life together, Raphael and me on our wedding day 25 years ago, Mateo's graduation from MIT, his wedding to Valentina 2 years earlier. Everything looked perfectly normal. Too normal. When Raphael returned from work that evening, I mentioned Carmen's observation casually over dinner. She said what? He barely looked up from his plate of paella, his signature dish that he'd insisted on making tonight, unusual for a Thursday. That woman needs to mind her business. She's always watching, always gossiping. Carmen isn't a gossip, I corrected him. She was a judge before retiring Raphael. She notices things. Exactly. She's bored and inventing drama. He poured more wine into my glass. Val probably stopped by once or twice for Mateo's things. Carmen exaggerated. Every Tuesday for a month. Raphael's fork paused midway to his mouth. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, worry. It disappeared so quickly I almost thought I'd imagined it. Bella, he said, using my nickname in that tender way that had always melted my defenses. You know how Carmen is? Remember when she was convinced the building manager was stealing packages? Turned out he was just holding them in his office for safekeeping. I nodded, wanting to believe him. Raphael reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb caressing my palm the way it had since we were college students in Madrid before immigrating to America. Don't let her put crazy ideas in your head, okay? We have that charity gala next weekend, and you need to finish your paintings for the silent auction. Focus on that. Later that night, as Raphael showered, I noticed his phone lighting up on the nightstand. Normally I would never check it. Trust had been the foundation of our marriage, but something pushed me forward. When I reached for it, I discovered he'd changed the passcode. After 25 years of marriage, suddenly there was a digital wall between us. That night I barely slept, listening to Raphael's even breathing beside me and wondering what other secrets he might be keeping. The following Tuesday, I did something I'd never done in 15 years at Coral Grove High School. I canceled my afternoon art class, telling the principal I had a migraine. Instead of driving home immediately, I parked my car at the cafe across from our building and waited. At exactly 1:58 p.m., a white Audi pulled into the visitor parking. My heart sank as Valentina stepped out, her long, dark hair swept up in a casual ponytail, designer sunglasses perched on her head. She looked around briefly before entering the building, moving with the confident stride of someone who belonged there. I waited 5 minutes before following, taking the service elevator to avoid Carmen or any other neighbors. In our hallway, I paused outside our door, key in hand, listening. Silence. I inserted the key as quietly as possible and opened the door just enough to slip inside. The sound of running water came from our master bathroom, along with soft humming, a Spanish lullaby my own mother used to sing. I moved silently across the living room and down the hallway, my heart thundering in my ears. The bathroom door was ajar. Through the crack, I could see Valentina at my vanity spraying my perfume, the expensive Parisian fragrance Raphael had given me for our anniversary, into the air around her. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, a small smile playing on her lips as she absorbed the scent. I backed away, retreating to the kitchen where I could hide behind the large center island. A moment later, Valentina emerged from the hallway, carrying something small in her hand. She walked to my dresser in the corner of our bedroom, visible through the open door, and slid open the top drawer where I kept my lingerie and personal items. She placed what looked like an envelope inside, then closed the drawer gently. Next, she moved to Raphael's side of the bed, straightened the already perfect duvet, and ran her hand over his pillow in a gesture so intimate it made my stomach clench. Before she could spot me, I slipped out the front door and back to the service elevator, my legs trembling so badly I nearly collapsed against the wall. In my car, I sat with my hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what I'd seen. It wasn't definitive proof of an affair, I reasoned. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. Perhaps she was leaving something for Matteo, though why she'd place it in my personal drawer made no sense. I drove aimlessly for an hour before returning home, making sure Valentina's car was gone. The apartment looked exactly as it had that morning, nothing out of place. I went straight to my dresser and opened the top drawer. There, nestled between my silk scarves, lay a small cream-colored envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a photograph taken 3 years ago at Matteo's graduation party. Raphael stood next to Valentina, his arm casually around her shoulders, as they laughed at something off camera. I remembered taking that photo myself, thinking how wonderful it was that my husband and future daughter-in-law got along so well. Now the image seemed different, the way they leaned into each other, the placement of Raphael's hand at her waist, rather than shoulder, the private joke reflected in their eyes. On the back of the photo, written in Valentina's flowing script, "Remember the beginning. 3 years and still our secret. Tuesday's always ours." My legs gave out and I sank to the floor, the photo clutched in my hand. 3 years, before she had even married my son. The room spun around me as the implications crashed through my mind. Not just an affair, a betrayal that went back to before she'd even become part of our family. I heard Raphael's key in the lock and frantically returned the envelope to its hiding place, arranging my scarves over it. By the time he entered the bedroom, I was sitting at my vanity pretending to apply face cream. "You're home early," he said, loosening his tie. "Migraine," I murmured, avoiding his eyes in the mirror. "I canceled my afternoon class." He came behind me, placing his hands on my shoulders. "Poor Bella. Let me make you some tea." His fingers felt like brands on my skin, and it took everything I had not to shrug them off. As he turned to leave, I caught a whiff of something on him, my perfume. The same one Valentina had been spraying in our bathroom. That night, after Raphael fell asleep, I carefully retrieved the envelope and took photos of it with my phone. I hid the original envelope in the lining of my winter coat hanging in the back of our closet, something I'd never wear in Miami unless we traveled. The next morning, I called Matteo. "Mama, how's the Sunshine State?" His voice was cheerful, so normal it made my heart ache. We chatted about his work, the new programming project. He was excited about the weather in Tampa versus Miami. Then, as casually as I could, I asked, "How's Valentina still busy with her design contracts?" "She's great. Super busy, actually. She has this new client in Miami she visits every Tuesday. Some big home renovation project, I think. She's being mysterious about it, says it's her special project." He laughed, oblivious to how each word stabbed me. "She's really making a name for herself in interior design." "That's wonderful," I managed. "Does she stay overnight in Miami?" "No, she drives back the same day. It's only a 4-hour drive each way. She says it's worth it for the connection." Connection indeed. After we hung up, I sat at our kitchen island, staring at the photo on my phone. The evidence was circumstantial, but damning. The envelope, the photograph with its intimate inscription, the perfume, Matteo's confirmation of her Tuesday trips to Miami, Raphael's changed phone password, his dismissal of Carmen's observations. I needed more proof, something irrefutable. And I needed a plan. That afternoon, I ordered 3 small security cameras from an online store that promised discreet packaging and next-day delivery. I paid extra for expedited shipping using my personal credit card rather than our joint account. Something told me to keep my actions as private as possible. While waiting for the cameras, I began paying closer attention to Raphael's behavior. He started working later than usual, claiming a major architectural project was behind schedule. Twice he canceled our regular Friday dinner date, citing client meetings. His phone rarely left his side, and he took calls in the bathroom or on the balcony, always out of earshot. When the cameras arrived in a plain brown box, I installed them while Raphael was at work, one in the living room bookshelf, aimed at the entry, one disguised as a decorative clock in the bedroom with a view of the dresser, and one hidden in a potted plant in the hallway. The cameras connected to an app on my phone, allowing me to view the footage remotely. I tested them by walking around the apartment, making sure they captured the key areas without being obvious. That weekend, Raphael suggested we visit friends in Key West. "It would be good for us to get away," he said over breakfast. "You seem tense lately, Bella." I forced a smile. "That sounds nice, but I have to prepare for the charity auction next weekend. Those paintings won't finish themselves." He didn't push, which struck me as unusual. Normally, he would have insisted, saying my art could wait. Instead, he nodded and mentioned he might go alone to clear his head. By Sunday evening, he'd decided to stay home after all. On Monday, I received a text from Valentina. "Hi, Bella, just checking if you'll be home tomorrow afternoon. Matteo asked me to pick up his old external hard drive next time I'm in Miami for my client meeting. He said it might be in the storage closet." My fingers hovered over the phone. This was her establishing an alibi, creating a reason to be in our home in case someone questioned her. "I have classes until 5, I replied. "But you have a key. Feel free to look for it." Her response came quickly. "Perfect, thank you." That heart emoji felt like a mockery. On Tuesday morning, I told Raphael I would be teaching all day. "I have a faculty meeting after classes." I lied. "I'll be home around 6. He kissed me goodbye, his lips barely brushing my cheek. "Have a good day, Bella." Instead of going to school, I called in sick again and drove to my friend Sophia's apartment. Sophia had been my closest friend since we both moved to Miami from Spain 20 years ago. She didn't ask questions when I said I needed a quiet place to work on my charity auction paintings, just handed me her spare key and mentioned she wouldn't be home until evening. From her apartment, I opened the security camera app on my phone and waited. At 1:45 p.m., the entry camera activated. Raphael entered our penthouse, which surprised me. He should have been at work. He moved purposefully through the living room, checking his watch. He straightened the pillows on the sofa, adjusted the flowers in the vase on the coffee table, and even sprayed air freshener. He was preparing for her arrival. At 2:03 p.m., the entry camera activated again. Valentina entered using her key. She called out softly, "Raphael?" He appeared from the kitchen holding 2 glasses of wine. The microphone on the camera picked up his response. "Right on time, mi vida." My breath caught at the endearment. My life. The same one he had once used only for me. They embraced in the entryway, a long, familiar kiss that spoke of established intimacy. Not a new affair, a long-term relationship. "I've missed you," Valentina said, taking the wine glass. This week felt endless. "I know." Raphael's hand caressed her face in a gesture I recognized all too well. "I had to cancel my Key West trip. Bella's been acting strange. I think she suspects something." Valentina's laugh was light dismissive. "She has no idea. Trust me, if Isabella knew anything, she wouldn't be quietly teaching her little art classes and planning charity auctions." The casual contempt in her voice made me grip my phone tighter. "Still," Raphael said, leading her toward the bedroom, "we should be careful. Carmen mentioned seeing you enter the building." "That old busybody," Valentina scoffed. "I told Bella I was picking up something for Matteo. She believed me instantly." The bedroom camera activated as they entered, still talking, still sipping wine. What happened next confirmed everything in the most painful way possible. I watched for a few minutes, enough to have irrefutable proof, then closed the app, my hands shaking. I sat in Sophia's quiet apartment, surrounded by her family photos and bright Spanish pottery, feeling as though my entire life had been a lie. 3 years. They had been carrying on this affair for 3 years, since Valentina first entered our lives as Matteo's girlfriend. While I welcomed her into our family, she had been betraying both me and my son. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it difficult to breathe. I moved to Sophia's balcony, gulping the humid Miami air, trying to clear my head. When I checked the app again an hour later, Valentina was leaving. The hallway camera captured her stopping at my dresser, placing another envelope in the drawer, their ritual apparently. Raphael followed her to the door, kissing her goodbye with promises to see her next Tuesday. After she left, he straightened the bedroom, erasing all evidence of their meeting. He checked his watch, then made a phone call. Carlos Rafael Morales here. Listen, I need to move another $50,000 from the West Shore project into that special account we discussed. Yes, today. My wife doesn't need to know this is for a surprise investment. I quickly grabbed a notepad from Sophia's desk and wrote down the name West Shore Project. Carlos, likely Carlos Suarez, Rafael's accountant. This was a new dimension to the betrayal. Rafael was moving company money into a separate account without my knowledge. The architectural firm had been his dream, but we had built it together with our joint savings when we first moved to America. Legally, I owned 40% of Morales Architectural Design. I watched as Rafael changed the sheets on our bed, took a shower, and then left the apartment at 4:30 p.m., presumably returning to work for a few hours before coming home. When the apartment was empty, I reopened the app and took screenshots of key moments, saving them to a secure folder on my phone. Then I called Sophia. Can you meet me for coffee? I need your advice on something important. Of course, she replied, concern evident in her voice. Are you okay, Isabella? You sound strange. No, I said honestly. I'm not okay, but I will be. Sophia listened without interruption as I showed her the camera footage, the photograph, and explained everything I had discovered. Her face darkened with each new detail. Hija de puta, she finally whispered, a rare curse from my usually elegant friend. And your son has no idea. None. He thinks she's working with a client in Miami. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, drawing comfort from its warmth. I don't know what to do, Sophia. If I confront Rafael, he'll deny everything. If I tell Mateo, it will destroy him. Sophia reached across the table and gripped my hand. First, you protect yourself, financially, emotionally, legally. Then you gather more evidence. Then you destroy them both. I blinked, surprised by her vehemence. I watched my sister forgive her cheating husband. Sophia continued, her voice hard. 3 times she took him back. He emptied their accounts the 4th time and disappeared. Don't be my sister, Isabella. That evening I returned home as if nothing had changed, greeted Rafael with a peck on the cheek, and asked about his day. We ate dinner on the balcony, watching the Miami sunset paint the sky in violent oranges and reds that matched the fury building inside me. How was your faculty meeting? He asked, pouring more wine. Productive? I lied. We're planning the spring art show. He nodded absently, checking his phone under the table. I pretended not to notice. After dinner, I said I needed to work on my paintings for the auction. In the small studio Rafael had designed for me when we renovated the penthouse 5 years ago, I closed the door and began my research. First, I looked into the West Shore project Rafael had mentioned on the phone. Using his laptop when he showered, he'd left it open on the kitchen counter. I accessed his work email with the password. He hadn't changed our anniversary date, ironically. I searched for West Shore and found several emails between Rafael and clients about a luxury condominium development in Tampa. The project budget was substantial, $12 million for architectural services alone. If Rafael was siphoning money from this account, the amounts could be significant. Next, I searched for communications between Rafael and Valentina. Most had been deleted, but in the trash folder I found an email draft that had never been sent. V. Need to talk about Tuesday arrangements. B is asking questions. Carmen noticed your visits. Might need to find new meeting place. Don't contact me directly for now. R. I forwarded the email to myself, then permanently deleted it from the trash to cover my tracks. Over the next few days, I maintained a perfect facade of normalcy while continuing my investigation. I scheduled a private meeting with our family attorney, Miguel Fernandez, claiming I wanted to update my will. In his office, surrounded by law books and with certificates on the wall attesting to his 40 years of legal practice, I felt safe enough to share my suspicions. Miguel, what I'm about to tell you must remain confidential, I began. His bushy eyebrows rose, but he nodded. Of course, Isabella. Attorney-client privilege. I believe Rafael is having an affair with our daughter-in-law and possibly misappropriating company funds. To his credit, Miguel's professional demeanor didn't slip. That's a serious allegation. Do you have evidence? Some, I said, showing him the photos and video screenshots. But I need to understand my legal options before I decide what to do. For the next hour, Miguel explained Florida's divorce laws, how infidelity could impact settlements, and what evidence would be needed to prove financial misconduct. He recommended I consult a forensic accountant and gather more documentation of any suspicious financial transactions. Whatever you decide to do, he said as our meeting concluded, Protect yourself first. Secure copies of all important documents, property deeds, bank statements, investment accounts. Open a separate bank account if you don't already have one. And be careful with those cameras, Isabella. Florida has strict privacy laws. Armed with Miguel's advice, I began systematically building my case. I copied all our financial records, property documents, and insurance policies. I opened a new bank account at a different bank and transferred a reasonable amount from my personal savings money I had earned from selling my paintings over the years. I also scheduled a meeting with Elena Martinez, the forensic accountant Miguel had recommended. She specialized in high-net-worth divorce cases and had a reputation for finding hidden assets. Based on what you've shown me, Elena said after reviewing the documents I'd gathered, there are definitely red flags. These large transfers from the business account to this offshore LLC Meridian Holdings have no clear business purpose, and the timing coincides with the Tuesday meetings you mentioned. She tapped her pen against her notepad. With your permission, I can do a deeper analysis. It will take about 2 weeks and cost around $3,000. Do it, I said without hesitation. The following Tuesday, instead of monitoring the cameras from afar, I decided to gather evidence in person. I parked in the visitor area of a neighboring building where I had a clear view of our entrance but wouldn't be easily spotted. At precisely 1:58 p.m., Valentina's white Audi pulled into the parking garage. 7 minutes later, Raphael's black Mercedes followed. I used my phone to video record both arrivals, making sure to capture the license plates and the timestamps. Then I waited. At 4:05 p.m., Raphael emerged first, checking his surroundings before walking to his car. Valentina followed 16 minutes later, looking relaxed and smiling at the valet as she retrieved her car. The evidence was mounting, but I needed to understand the full scope of their deception, particularly the financial aspects. If Raphael was hiding money, possibly planning to leave me, I needed to know what I was facing. That evening, Raphael mentioned he would be traveling to Chicago the following week for a design conference. It's last minute, but the firm handling the West Shore project specifically requested I present our concept. He explained, not quite meeting my eyes. I'll be gone Thursday through Sunday. I nodded, expressing appropriate interest in the conference while my mind raced. This was an opportunity to search more thoroughly for evidence without fear of interruption. After he went to sleep, I checked our joint credit card statement online. There was a first-class ticket to Chicago in Raphael's name for Thursday, but also a reservation at the St. Regis in Miami Beach for Friday and Saturday nights. The reservation was for 2 people. They were planning a weekend together right here in Miami while I believed Raphael was in Chicago. The next day, I drove to our bank and accessed our safe deposit box, something I hadn't done in years. Inside were the expected items, our wills, property deeds, insurance policies, my grandmother's jewelry. But there was also a document I didn't recognize, paperwork for Meridian Holdings LLC, the same company Elena had flagged in her initial review. The LLC was registered in Raphael's name, only despite our agreement that all business ventures would be joint. The registered agent was Carlos Suarez, his accountant, and the mailing address was a P.O. box I didn't recognize. I used my phone to photograph every page of the document before returning everything exactly as I'd found it. That evening, I received an email from Elena Martinez. Need to speak with you urgently. Please call my office tomorrow morning. I barely slept, my mind churning with possibilities. Had she found evidence of more extensive financial misconduct? Was Raphael planning to leave me financially destitute while starting a new life with Valentina? The next morning after Raphael left for work, I called Elena. Isabella, she said, her voice grave. I've completed the preliminary financial analysis, and it's worse than we thought. Over the past 2 years, approximately $1.2 million has been transferred from Morales Architectural Design to Meridian Holdings LLC, then distributed to various offshore accounts. Based on the patterns, this appears to be systematic diversion of company assets. The amount took my breath away. $1.2 million, that's almost all of our company's profits from the last 2 years. Exactly, Elena confirmed. And there's more. One of the recipient accounts is in the name of Valentina Hernandez. She's received about $350,000 so far. I gripped the phone tighter. Can you document all of this for legal purposes? Already working on it. I'll have a comprehensive report for you by next week. In the meantime, Isabella, you might want to consider securing your remaining assets. If this pattern continues, your company could face serious financial difficulties. After the call ended, I sat on our balcony overlooking Biscayne Bay, watching the boats glide across the water as my world collapsed around me. The betrayal went beyond the affair. Rafael was systematically draining our business, the company we had built together over 20 years. He was stealing not just my trust and my heart, but my financial security as well. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to cry deep, racking sobs that came from someplace primal. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the family, being torn apart, for my son, who would soon learn a devastating truth about the woman he loved and the father he admired. When the tears finally subsided, something else took their place: resolve. Cold, clear determination. I would not be a victim. I would not be discarded after 25 years of building a life together. I would not allow Rafael and Valentina to destroy everything I had worked for. I picked up my phone and texted Carmen. "Can we talk? You were right. I need your advice." Her response came immediately. "Mi casa, 1 hour. Bring everything you know." Carmen's apartment on the 10th floor was a testament to her successful career, and refined taste. Leather-bound law books lined the shelves. Awards from her judicial career displayed discreetly on the walls. Expensive furniture arranged for both beauty and comfort. She listened without interruption as I shared everything I had discovered, occasionally nodding or making notes. When I finished, she walked to her desk, removed a business card from a drawer, and handed it to me. "Javier Mendoza," she said. "The best private investigator in Miami, former FBI. Tell him I sent you." I looked at the card. "Is this necessary? I already have video evidence." Carmen's eyes, sharp as ever, met mine. "Isabella, when I discovered my husband's affair 30 years ago, I thought evidence was enough. I confronted him immediately, emotional and unprepared. He had time to hide assets, manipulate mutual friends, and create a narrative that painted me as unstable." Her voice hardened. "I lost everything except my dignity. I won't let that happen to you." She leaned forward, taking my hands in hers. "They think you're weak. They think you won't fight. They're underestimating you, and that is their mistake. But you need to be smarter, more strategic, and completely prepared before you make your move." I nodded, tucking the card into my purse. "And Isabella," Carmen added, her voice gentler now, "remember that Mateo is a victim in this, too. When the time comes to tell him, be prepared for his pain as well as your own." On my way home, I called Javier Mendoza and scheduled an appointment for the following day. That evening, when Rafael kissed me goodbye before his supposed trip to Chicago, I smiled and wished him a successful presentation. "I'll miss you." I lied, playing the role of devoted wife one last time. As soon as his car pulled away from the building, I opened my laptop and began writing out everything I knew, everything I had discovered, and everything I still needed to find. I listed all the evidence I had gathered, organized by date and type. I created a timeline of the affair, the financial transactions, and Rafael's lies. The document became my battle plan, my roadmap to justice. I titled it simply "The Truth." Tomorrow I would meet with Javier Mendoza. I would continue gathering evidence. I would prepare myself financially, emotionally, and legally for the confrontation to come. But for tonight, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of betrayal, to acknowledge the death of the marriage I thought I had, and to mourn the family that would never be the same. As midnight approached, I walked through our penthouse, seeing it with new eyes, not as the home we had built together, but as the beautiful stage where an elaborate deception had played out. The art on the walls, the furniture we had chosen together, the photographs of happier times, all of it felt tainted now. In our bedroom, I opened my dresser drawer and found the envelope Valentina had left earlier that week. Inside was another photograph, this one taken recently at a family dinner. Rafael and Valentina sitting across from each other, their eyes meeting in a secret exchange, while Mateo and I remained oblivious. On the back she had written, "Soon we won't need Tuesdays. Soon we'll have forever." I replaced the envelope, closed the drawer, and made a silent promise to myself. They would never have their forever. Not at the expense of everything I had built, everything I had loved, everything I had been. The game they thought they were winning was about to change, and they had no idea what was coming. The morning after Rafael left for his fake Chicago trip, I met Javier Mendoza at his office in a nondescript building in Coral Gables. Unlike the flashy private investigators you see in movies, Javier was understated, a former FBI agent in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair and watchful eyes that missed nothing. "Carmen speaks highly of you," he said after I introduced myself. "That means something in my book." I laid out everything I had discovered: the affair, the financial deception, the upcoming weekend rendezvous at the St. Regis. Javier took meticulous notes without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Here's what I can do," he said when I finished. "Surveillance of both subjects this weekend, documentation of their activities, and a complete background investigation on Valentina Hernandez. I'll also review the financial information your accountant provided and see if there are connections we're missing." "How much?" I asked. "5,000 for the initial investigation. More if we need extensive surveillance or specialized financial tracing." He studied my face. "It's an investment in your future, Mrs. Morales. The evidence we gather could be worth millions in a divorce settlement." I wrote the check without hesitation. As I turned to leave, Javier added, "One more thing. Don't tell anyone about our arrangement except Carmen and your attorney. Not your friends, not your son. The fewer people who know, the better." I nodded, understanding the need for secrecy. "And Mrs. Morales," his voice softened slightly, "you're doing the right thing. I've seen too many cases where people confronted their spouses too soon with too little evidence. It never ends well." From Javier's office, I drove to Carmen's apartment. She answered the door wearing an elegant coral house dress, her silver hair perfectly arranged despite the early hour. "Come in," she said, leading me to her sunlit living room where coffee and pastries waited. "Tell me everything." I explained my meeting with Javier, the ongoing financial investigation with Elena, and my consultation with Miguel. Carmen listened attentively, occasionally making suggestions or asking questions. "You've been thorough," she said approvingly. "But now you need a strategy, not just evidence. What do you want the end result to be?" The question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on uncovering the truth that I hadn't fully considered what would come after. My voice faltered. "I want justice. I want Rafael to lose everything he's trying to steal from me. I want Valentina exposed for who she really is, especially to my son." Carmen nodded. "That's a start, but be more specific. Do you want to remain married? Do you want the business? The penthouse financial compensation? Think like a chess player. What's your end game?" I took a sip of coffee, considering her words. "I want the business. It's as much mine as his. I want the penthouse where I've built my life. I want financial security. And I want them both to face consequences for what they've done." "Good." Carmen's approval was like a small victory. "Now what's your timeline?" "Rafael returns Sunday night. They're spending the weekend at the St. Regis. I could confront him when he comes home with evidence of where he really was." Carmen shook her head firmly. "Too soon. Your financial investigation isn't complete. You haven't secured your assets, and a confrontation now would only drive them to be more careful, possibly accelerating whatever plans they have." She rose and walked to her bookshelf, removing a leather-bound journal. "When Judge Williams finally caught my husband's deception, she gave me this advice. I've never forgotten it." Carmen opened the journal and read, "The person who controls the timing controls the outcome." She handed me the journal. "Write your plan here, every step, every contingency, and be patient. The right moment will present itself." That evening, alone in the penthouse, I opened Carmen's journal and began to write. My plan took shape slowly, methodically. 1. Secure financial evidence in progress with Elena. 2. Document the affair in progress with Javier. 3. Protect remaining assets. 4. Prepare legal strategy with Miguel. 5. Find the right moment for confrontation. 6. Tell Mateo the hardest step of all. I closed the journal, feeling a strange sense of calm. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't simply reacting, I was preparing. The next morning, Elena called with an update. "Isabella, I've traced the money trail more thoroughly. Rafael has been transferring company profits into Meridian Holdings, then distributing them to 3 offshore accounts, one in his name, one in Valentina's name, and a joint account in the Cayman Islands. How much in total? Just over $1.7 million. And I found something else, a lease agreement for a beachfront condo in Key Biscayne, signed by both Rafael and Valentina 3 months ago. They've been paying $8,000 monthly, drawn from the joint offshore account." My stomach clenched. "They've rented a place together." "It appears so. And based on the documentation, they've signed a 2-year lease." The implications were clear. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning a life together. A wave of nausea washed over me as I realized how methodically they had been planning their exit. "Can you send me all the documentation? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Of course. I'm compiling a complete report. Should be ready by Tuesday. After hanging up, I sat at my desk staring at the family photos arranged in a neat row. Rafael and me on our wedding day in Madrid. The three of us, Rafael, Mateo, and me, when Mateo graduated from high school. And the most recent, all four of us at Mateo and Valentina's wedding 2 years ago. Valentina in her white dress, beaming at my son while standing next to my husband, both of them already deep into their betrayal. I removed that last photo, placing it face down in the drawer. Then I made 3 calls. First to our bank, where I arranged to transfer half of our joint savings, approximately $240,000, to my new private account. It was a bold move, but legally defensible according to Miguel. I was entitled to half of our marital assets, and I needed to protect them before Rafael could drain them completely. Second to our property management company, informing them that we were changing the locks due to security concerns, and requesting that no new keys be issued without my explicit approval. Third to Lucia Dominguez, the realtor who had helped us buy our penthouse 15 years ago. Lucia, I need a discreet valuation of our property, I explained, for insurance purposes. Of course, Isabella. The market in Coral Terrace is very strong right now. Your unit would likely list around $3.2 million. The figure momentarily stunned me. Our home had more than doubled in value since we purchased it. Another asset Rafael and Valentina would never get their hands on. That evening, Javier sent the first surveillance photos. Rafael and Valentina arriving separately at the St. Regis, checking in together, dining at the hotel's exclusive restaurant, walking hand in hand along the beach. In each image, they looked relaxed, happy, oblivious to the fact that their secret world was crumbling. The final photo showed them on their ocean view balcony toasting with champagne as the Miami sunset painted them in golden light. On another day, in another life, I might have found the image beautiful. Now it only strengthened my resolve. I continued my preparations throughout the weekend, moving methodically through my list. I gathered important documents, made copies of everything, and secured them in a new safe deposit box at my private bank. I photographed valuable items in our home artwork jewelry antiques, documenting what belonged to our marital estate. On Sunday afternoon, I received a text from Rafael. Flight delayed. Should be home around 10 p.m. Don't wait up. Another lie. Another opportunity. I knew from Javier's updates that Rafael and Valentina had checked out of the St. Regis at noon. Where was he now? What other deceptions were still hidden at 10:22 p.m.? Rafael finally came home carrying his overnight bag and wearing the exhausted expression of a business traveler. How was Chicago? I asked, looking up from the book I pretended to read. Cold. Productive. He set down his bag. The presentation went well. The clients were impressed. I nodded, watching him unpack his perfectly arranged suitcase dress shirts, still wrapped from the hotel laundry service toiletry kit, neatly packed. He had staged it all meticulously. You must be tired from the flight, I said. I made some chamomile tea if you want. He seemed surprised by the gesture. Thanks, Bella. That would be nice. As we sat in the kitchen, steam rising from our mugs, I studied the man I had loved for 25 years. The familiar lines around his eyes, the gray at his temples that had once seemed distinguished, but now just marked the passing of years we could never reclaim. I searched for some sign of guilt, some indication that betraying our life together had cost him something. I found nothing. The charity auction is next weekend, I reminded him. The gallery expects at least 5 of my paintings. You'll do great as always. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I should have some good news about the West Shore project by then, too. The clients are very enthusiastic. Another lie casually delivered. The West Shore project existed, but the money it generated was flowing into accounts I would never see. I smiled back, playing my role in this elaborate charade. I'm so proud of your success, Rafael. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Discomfort, regret. It disappeared quickly, replaced by a yawn he didn't try to hide. I should get to bed. Early meeting tomorrow. He kissed my cheek, a perfunctory gesture devoid of affection, and retreated to our bedroom. I remained at the kitchen table sipping my tea, mentally adding another item to my list. Learn to act as convincingly as they do. The next morning, Rafael left for work earlier than usual. As soon as he was gone, I checked the security cameras I had installed. The bedroom camera revealed that after I had fallen asleep, Rafael had spent nearly an hour texting someone, his face illuminated by the blue glow of his phone screen. I forwarded the footage to Javier with a note. Can you get his phone records? His response was immediate. Already working on it. Meeting today at 2 p.m. to discuss weekend findings. We met at a small cafe in Coconut Grove, far from Raphael's office and our social circle. Javier brought a thick folder of photos, documents, and reports. They spent most of the weekend at the St. Regis, he explained, showing me time-stamped photos. But Saturday afternoon they visited a property in Key Biscayne. Based on the real estate listings, it's the condo your accountant identified, oceanfront, 3 bedrooms recently renovated. He slid another photo across the table. Raphael and Valentina standing on a balcony overlooking the ocean, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. They were looking out at the view, but it was their expressions that caught my attention. Peaceful content like a long-married couple rather than illicit lovers. This is their future home, I said, my voice flat. Appears so. I also did the background check on Mrs. Hernandez Morales. Javier opened another folder. Some interesting findings. She's not who she claims to be. My head snapped up. What do you mean? Her resume lists a design degree from Rhode Island School of Design. She never attended. The interior design business she claims to run has no business license, no tax records, no clients besides the fictional one she mentions to your son. I stared at him, trying to process this new information. So what does she actually do? Based on my investigation, nothing legitimate. Before meeting your son, she worked as a hostess at several high-end restaurants in Tampa, which is where she likely met your husband during his business trips. There are gaps in her employment history that align with cash deposits to her personal accounts. Javier hesitated, then added, There's one more thing. She was briefly married before to a wealthy real estate developer in Tampa. The marriage lasted 11 months. She received a substantial settlement when they divorced. A pattern, I murmured, pieces falling into place. She targets wealthy men. That would be my assessment. Javier closed the folder. Mrs. Morales, based on everything I've uncovered, I believe your husband and daughter-in-law are planning to leave their respective marriages within the next few months. The Key Biscayne condo. The offshore accounts the systematic diversion of assets. These aren't impulsive actions. This is a calculated exit strategy. I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. Then we need to move faster than they expect. The locksmith arrived Tuesday morning, a burly man named Eduardo, who efficiently changed every lock in our penthouse within 2 hours. All done, Mrs. Morales, he said, handing me the new keys. These are impossible to duplicate without the security card I've left you. Very high-end. I paid him in cash, adding a generous tip. Thank you for your discretion. That afternoon, I visited our bank and removed my grandmother's jewelry and important family documents from our joint safe deposit box, transferring them to my new private box at a different bank. The manager raised an eyebrow when I emptied the old box completely, but said nothing. My next stop was our insurance company, where I updated the policy on my art studio to ensure my paintings and supplies were covered separately from our home policy. The agent, a friendly woman who had handled our insurance for years, seemed confused by my sudden interest in the details of our coverage. Just being thorough, I explained with a smile. Artists need to protect their work. By the time Raphael returned home that evening, I had completed my list of financial precautions. When he tried his key in the door and found it didn't work, I heard him jiggle the handle in frustration before ringing the doorbell. I opened the door with a look of surprise. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the building management changed all the locks today. Something about a security upgrade. I handed him a new key. Here you go. They only gave us 2 sets. Raphael frowned, examining the unfamiliar key. They should have notified us. They sent an email last week, I lied smoothly. I mentioned it at breakfast, but you were in a hurry. He couldn't argue without admitting he hadn't been paying attention to me, so he simply pocketed the key with a shrug. Any other surprises I should know about? I laughed, the sound surprisingly natural. No, that's it. How was your day? Over dinner, I casually mentioned installing a new security system for my art studio. After that break-in on the 8th floor last month, I got worried about my paintings for the charity auction. They're worth quite a bit. Raphael nodded absently, checking his phone under the table. Good idea. I set up cameras. I continued watching him carefully. Amazing how small and unobtrusive they are these days. You can barely see them. His head jerked up, eyes suddenly alert. Cameras. Just in my studio, I assured him, noting the flash of alarm that crossed his face. For insurance purposes. But the technology is impressive. They can record for weeks, store everything in the cloud. Raphael set down his fork, appetite apparently gone. I didn't realize you were so concerned about security. Oh, you know me, I said lightly. Always better safe than sorry. That night he was unusually attentive, suggesting we watch a movie together, pouring wine, asking about my paintings. To anyone else, it might have seemed like a husband making an effort to reconnect. I knew better. He was assessing whether I suspected anything, trying to gauge if my security concerns were innocent or targeted. I played along, accepting his attention with the same warm smile I had given him for 25 years. But inside, a cold satisfaction grew as I watched him try to decipher my actions. The game had changed, and he didn't even know the new rules. The following morning, I received a call from Elena. The forensic financial report is complete. It's worse than we thought, Isabella. In addition to the $1.7 million already diverted, Raphael has taken out a second mortgage on the penthouse, $500,000 processed 3 months ago. My blood ran cold. That's impossible. I would have had to sign the documents. That's what I thought, too. I obtained copies from the bank. Her voice tightened. Isabella, your signature appears on the paperwork. It's forged, I said immediately. I never signed anything like that. I suspected as much. I've arranged for a handwriting expert to examine the documents. If it's a forgery, as I believe it is, this moves beyond financial infidelity into criminal fraud. After ending the call, I sat at my desk, trembling with rage. Raphael hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He had committed a crime using my name, risking the home I loved. The violation felt even more intimate than the affair. I called Miguel immediately. Raphael forged my signature on a second mortgage. I need to know my options. This changes the situation significantly, he said gravely. Forgery is a criminal offense. We should meet as soon as possible to discuss how this impacts our strategy. In Miguel's office that afternoon, he laid out the new legal landscape. With evidence of forgery, you have leverage beyond the typical divorce proceedings. This is potentially criminal fraud, which could result in jail time. I don't necessarily want Raphael in jail, I said, surprising myself. I want justice, not vengeance. Miguel leaned forward. Isabella, I understand your reluctance, but this forgery reveals the extent of his deception. It also gives us tremendous leverage in negotiations. He'll be motivated to settle quickly and generously rather than risk criminal charges. I nodded slowly. What about the business? Can I protect it? As a 40% owner, you have significant rights. I recommend filing for an emergency injunction to freeze the company accounts pending investigation. This would prevent any further diversion of assets. Do it, I said without hesitation. And prepare the divorce papers. I want everything ready when the time comes. That evening, Valentina called me directly, something she rarely did. My heart raced as I answered, keeping my voice casual. Valentina, how nice to hear from you. Hi, Bella, she said, her tone warm and friendly. I'm coming to Miami next Tuesday for my client meeting, and I was wondering if we could have lunch afterward. It's been too long since we had some mother-daughter time. The audacity nearly took my breath away. Mother-daughter time. As if she hadn't been betraying me for years. That sounds lovely, I replied, matching her friendly tone. There's a new Spanish restaurant in Brickell I've been wanting to try. Shall we say 3:30? Perfect. I'll meet you there. Text me the address. After hanging up, I immediately called Javier. Valentina wants to meet for lunch next Tuesday. I need to know why. She's testing you, he said without hesitation. Your husband probably told her about your security camera comment. They're trying to determine if you suspect anything. What should I do? Meet her. Act normal. This is an opportunity to gather information while making them believe you're oblivious. I agreed, then added, there's something else. Raphael forged my signature on a second mortgage, $500,000. Javier was silent for a moment. That crosses a line, Mrs. Morales. We need to move more quickly now. Can you meet tomorrow to revise our timeline? The next day we met at Carmen's apartment, where I briefed them both on the latest developments. Carmen listened with growing outrage as I explained the forgery. This is no longer just about an affair, she said, pacing her living room. This is systematic financial abuse. He's stealing your future, Isabella. I agree, said Javier. Based on the evidence we've gathered and the escalation represented by the forgery, I believe they're accelerating their timeline. The original plan was likely to wait until after the West Shore project was completed this summer, giving them access to the final payments. But they may move sooner now. Carmen stopped pacing. Isabella needs to strike first, before they empty every account. I'm filing for an emergency injunction tomorrow. I told them, Miguel is preparing the paperwork now. It will freeze the business accounts and prevent Rafael from accessing our major assets. Good, said Javier. But we should also consider when and how to inform your son. The longer he remains in the dark, the more vulnerable he is. The thought of telling Mateo made my stomach clench. I can't do that to him yet. Not until I have everything in place. Carmen sat beside me, taking my hand in hers. Isabella, I understand your desire to protect him. But consider this. Would you rather he hear the truth from you with compassion and evidence, or from them with whatever narrative they construct to justify their actions? I closed my eyes, imagining Valentina spinning a story to my son, painting me as unstable or vindictive, portraying her relationship with Rafael as something that developed innocently after problems in our marriage. You're right, I admitted. But I need to do it carefully. He loves her, and despite everything, he still respects his father. Then we plan that conversation as carefully as everything else, Carmen said firmly. No improvisation, no emotion without purpose. We spent the next hour outlining the weeks ahead, the emergency injunction, the meeting with Valentina, the preparation of divorce papers, and finally the conversation with Mateo. Each step precisely timed, each action designed to secure my position before the final confrontation. As I drove home that evening, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The pain hadn't diminished. If anything, each new revelation deepened the wound. But the helplessness was gone, replaced by purpose. They had underestimated me, assumed I would remain the trusting, supportive wife and mother-in-law who always put family first. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The following Tuesday arrived with a sense of inevitability. I spent the morning at the gallery delivering my paintings for the charity auction, then returned home to prepare for my lunch with Valentina. I chose my outfit carefully, a coral silk blouse that Rafael had always admired, linen pants, my grandmother's pearl earrings. I wanted to look exactly as she expected, the elegant, somewhat conservative artist, the devoted wife and mother who suspected nothing. The restaurant I had selected, El Jardín, was new and exclusive, requiring reservations weeks in advance. But the owner was an old friend who had purchased several of my paintings over the years. He ensured we had the best table on the terrace, private, yet with a clear view of Biscayne Bay. I arrived 20 minutes early, asking the waiter to bring a bottle of Albarino, a white wine from Galicia that I knew Valentina favored. Everything had to appear normal, generous, unsuspecting. She arrived precisely on time, looking stunning in a white summer dress that emphasized her tanned skin and the diamond necklace I recognized as a gift from my son on their first anniversary. Her long, dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her makeup flawless despite the Miami humidity. Bella, she embraced me with practiced warmth. You look wonderful. Is that a new blouse? An old favorite, I corrected, returning her embrace with equal fakery. You're the one who looks stunning as always. We settled at the table and I poured her wine. How was your client meeting? Productive, she said vaguely. They're renovating a waterfront property in Coconut Grove. Very high-end, very demanding. I nodded, knowing there was no client, no renovation project. And how's Mateo? I haven't spoken to him in a few days. Busy as always? You know how he gets with his coding projects? She sipped her wine. This is delicious. You always know the best wines. Spanish blood? I joked. It's genetic. We ordered tapas to share gambas al ajillo pan con tomate jamón ibérico. The conversation remained superficial through the first course, discussing Miami's weather, mutual acquaintances, the charity auction. Valentina was charming, attentive, the perfect daughter-in-law. As our main courses arrived, she leaned forward with a conspiratorial smile. So, Bella, I've been meaning to ask you something. Rafael mentioned you've installed security cameras in your apartment. And there it was, the real purpose of this lunch. I kept my expression neutral, spearing a piece of sea bass. Just in my studio. After the Phillips apartment was broken into last month, I got worried about my paintings. Some are quite valuable. Of course, she nodded. Security is so important, but isn't it a bit intrusive? Having cameras in your home? I laughed lightly. They're only in the studio, Val. It's not like I've got them in the bedroom. Her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. Right, of course. Still, it seems a bit extreme. Perhaps, I conceded. But better safe than sorry, especially with valuable art. You know how insurance companies are. They want documentation of everything. Valentina relaxed visibly, apparently satisfied with my explanation. That makes sense. Raphael seemed concerned, but I told him you were just being practical. Raphael was concerned. I raised an eyebrow. That's sweet but unnecessary. I'm not planning to set up a surveillance state. I laughed again, then shifted the conversation. Tell me about your design business. Any other exciting projects besides the Coconut Grove renovation? She launched into an elaborate fiction about her growing client list, her artistic vision, her plans to expand. I listened attentively, nodding at appropriate moments, all while cataloging each lie. You're so talented, I said when she finished. We're lucky to have you in the family. That means a lot coming from you, Bella. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. You've always been so supportive, so welcoming, like the mother I never really had. The sincerity in her voice nearly broke my composure. How could she sit across from me, praising me as a mother figure while sleeping with my husband and plotting to destroy my family? The layers of deception were almost impressive in their complexity. I squeezed her hand in return. Family is everything to me, Val. I would do anything to protect the people I love. Something in my tone must have registered because she withdrew her hand, a flash of uncertainty crossing her face. Of course, as would I. We finished lunch with forced pleasantries. As the waiter cleared our plates, Valentina checked her phone and frowned. I should get going soon. The drive back to Tampa is always longer than I expect. I signaled for the check. Of course. Give Mateo my love when you see him. Actually, she said, her tone brightening, why don't you come visit us in Tampa next month? You and Raphael could stay the weekend. It's been too long since we've had you both. Another test. I smiled warmly. That sounds wonderful. Let me check with Raphael and we'll set a date. Outside the restaurant, we embraced again. As she pulled away, Valentina studied my face. It was so good to see you, Bella. You seem different somehow. More relaxed. I maintained my smile. Perhaps it's having these paintings finished for the auction. A weight off my shoulders. That must be it. She kissed my cheek. Drive safely. As I watched her walk to her car, her white dress bright in the afternoon sun, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Disgust at her performance. Admiration for her skill at deception. Sadness for my son who loved her. And underneath it all, a cold determination that strengthened with every passing day. I called Javier from my car. She was fishing about the cameras, trying to determine if I suspect anything. Did she seem satisfied with your answers? I think so, but she suggested Raphael and I visit them in Tampa next month. Another test, I assume. Agree to it, Javier advised. Keep them believing you're oblivious. Meanwhile, our timeline accelerates. The emergency injunction should be filed tomorrow. After that, they'll know something's wrong. That evening, Raphael called to say he would be working late. Another lie. Javier's surveillance confirmed he was meeting Valentina at their Key Biscayne condo. I used the opportunity to visit Mateo's old bedroom, which I had maintained exactly as he left it when he moved out for college 10 years earlier. Sitting on his bed, surrounded by his childhood trophies, science fair medals, and faded posters, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not just for my marriage or my own pain, but for what was to come. Mateo would be devastated. His relationship with his father would never be the same. The family we had built over decades would fracture irreparably. For a moment, I questioned everything. Was this pursuit of justice worth the collateral damage? Would it be simpler to pretend I knew nothing, to let Raphael and Valentina have their secret life while I maintained the facade of our family? The thought evaporated as quickly as it formed. I deserved better than a life built on lies. Mateo deserved the truth, however painful. And Raphael and Valentina deserved consequences for their actions. I wiped my tears, straightened my shoulders, and left the room, closing the door firmly behind me. The time for grief was ending. The time for action had arrived. The emergency injunction landed like a bomb the next morning. I was in Miguel's office when Raphael called, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "What the hell is this, Isabella? The company accounts are frozen, a court order requiring financial disclosure. What are you doing?" "Protecting what's mine," I replied calmly. "Miguel can explain the legal details if you'd like to speak with him." "Miguel, you involved a lawyer without talking to me first. Have you lost your mind?" "No, Raphael, I've found it. We can discuss this when you're calmer, or your attorney can contact Miguel directly." I ended the call as Raphael was still shouting, his voice rising in pitch and volume. My phone immediately rang again, Valentina this time. I declined the call. Miguel looked at me with concern. Are you all right? Better than I expected, I said truthfully. It feels good to finally act instead of just react. They'll fight the injunction, he warned, and they'll move quickly now that they know you're onto them. Let them try. We have the evidence. I left Miguel's office and drove directly to Carmen's apartment where Javier was waiting with updates from his surveillance team. They're panicking, he reported, showing me photos taken just an hour earlier, Rafael and Valentina meeting in a park, both gesticulating wildly, clearly arguing. This wasn't a planned meeting. They're improvising now, which works in our favor. People make mistakes when they're desperate. Carmen brought us coffee, her expression grim but satisfied. The real test comes now. They'll try to turn people against you, friends, family, business associates. They'll paint you as unstable, vindictive, imagining things. I'm prepared, I assured her, though my stomach tightened at the thought. My phone buzzed with a text from Mateo. Mom, what's going on? Dad called me freaking out about lawyers and frozen accounts. Are you guys okay? The moment I had dreaded had arrived. I showed the text to Carmen and Javier. It's time, Carmen said gently. He needs to hear the truth from you, not their version. I nodded, my heart heavy. I'll drive to Tampa tomorrow. This needs to be done in person. Before I could respond to Mateo's text, another call came through Rafael again. This time I answered. Isabella, we need to talk. This is insane. I agree, I said coolly. Where would you like to meet? His surprise at my ready agreement was palpable in the brief silence that followed. Home, tonight, 8 p.m. I'll be there. After ending the call, I turned to Carmen and Javier. Rafael wants to meet tonight. Don't go alone, Javier said immediately. He's desperate, and desperate people can be dangerous. I'll come with you, Carmen offered. I can wait in the car, be nearby if you need help. I shook my head. I need to do this myself, but I'll keep my phone on with both of you on speed dial. That evening, I arrived home at 7:45 p.m. to find Rafael already waiting, pacing the living room like a caged animal. He spun toward me as I entered, his face flushed with anger. What the hell are you doing? He demanded without preamble. Do you have any idea how this injunction affects the business? We could lose the West Shore project. Interesting concern, I replied, setting down my purse calmly. Considering the profits from that project were never going to reach the company accounts anyway. He froze, his expression shifting from anger to wariness. What are you talking about? Meridian Holdings LLC, the offshore accounts, the second mortgage you forged my signature on. I maintained steady eye contact. Should I continue? Rafael's face drained of color. He sank onto the sofa, the bluster evaporating. How long have you known? Long enough to gather substantial evidence, including footage of you and Valentina together. His head snapped up. You were spying on me. An ironic complaint from a man who has been systematically betraying his wife and son for 3 years. Rafael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had once found endearing. Now it just seemed theatrical. It's not what you think, Bella. Valentina and I... It's complicated. It's actually quite simple, I countered. You've been having an affair with our son's wife. You've been diverting company assets. You committed forgery. Each one is a straightforward betrayal. He stood again, moving toward me. Let me explain. Please. I stepped back. I'm not interested in explanations. I'm meeting with Mateo tomorrow to tell him everything. No. The panic in his voice was unmistakable. Don't drag him into this. We can work this out between us. Work what out exactly? Our divorce, the criminal charges for forgery, or the fact that you and Valentina have been planning to abandon your respective spouses and start a new life with stolen money? Rafael stared at me, seemingly seeing me clearly for the first time in years. You've changed, Isabella. Yes, I agreed. I've become someone who won't accept betrayal quietly. Someone who fights for what's hers. He paced again, his mind visibly racing. What do you want, money, the penthouse? Name your price to keep this quiet. The casual assumption that I could be bought off ignited a fresh wave of anger. I don't have a price, Rafael. I want justice. I want the truth known. I want consequences for actions. You'll destroy everything. The business, our reputation, Mateo's marriage. No, I said firmly. You destroyed those things the moment you decided your desires were more important than your family's trust. I'm simply revealing the ruins. He approached me again, his expression shifting to pleading. Bella, please. We've been married 25 years. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything to me, I said, my voice finally betraying emotion. That's why your betrayal deserves no mercy. Raphael's phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at it, then back at me, indecision clear on his face. That's her, isn't it? I asked. Go ahead, answer. Tell Valentina her perfect plan is falling apart. His jaw tightened. This isn't over. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. After he stormed out, I sank into a chair, my composure finally cracking. The confrontation had gone as well as I could have hoped. I'd maintained control, revealed enough to shake him without showing all my cards. But the emotional toll was tremendous. My phone rang, Carmen checking in. He just left, I told her, angry but aware that I know everything. Are you all right? Yes, I took a deep breath. But tomorrow will be harder, telling Mateo. Do you want company on the drive to Tampa? I considered her offer. No, but thank you. This is something I need to do alone. After we hung up, I went to the balcony with a glass of wine, looking out at the Miami skyline sparkling against the night sky. The city looked the same as it had yesterday, last week, last year. But everything had changed. Tomorrow I would tell my son that his wife and father had betrayed him in the most intimate way possible. Tomorrow I would shatter his world, just as mine had been shattered. There was no victory in that, no satisfaction, only the necessary pain of truth. I finished my wine and went inside to pack an overnight bag for Tampa. In the morning I would drive north to face the hardest conversation of my life. But tonight I had stood my ground against the man who thought I would break. Tonight I had shown Raphael that the woman he had underestimated was now the one he should fear. It wasn't happiness I felt as I prepared for bed in our empty penthouse. It was something cleaner, sharper, a sense of reclaiming what was mine. Not just material possessions or legal rights, but my dignity, my agency, my future. The game Raphael and Valentina had been playing for 3 years was ending. And despite their head start, their planning, their deceptions, they were about to lose everything. I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The 4-hour drive to Tampa stretched before me like a final test of resolve. I left Miami at dawn, the coastal highway nearly empty as I headed north. In the passenger seat lay Carmen's journal filled with my notes, my evidence, my battle plan for the conversation ahead. I had called Mateo before leaving, asking if I could visit. Of course, Mom, but what's going on? The worry in his voice was palpable. Dad called again last night. He sounded, I don't know, scared. He said you're making some kind of mistake. We'll talk when I get there, I promised. Is Valentina home? She left early this morning, client meeting in Orlando. She'll be back tomorrow. Another lie. According to Javier's surveillance, Valentina had never left Miami after our lunch. She had spent the night at the Key Biscayne condo with Raphael. As I drove, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would present the evidence, how I would support my son through the devastation to come. But no amount of preparation could ease the knot in my stomach. I was about to inflict necessary pain on someone I loved more than life itself. Mateo and Valentina's home was a modern townhouse in an upscale Tampa neighborhood, 2 bedrooms, minimalist furniture, lots of natural light. My son greeted me at the door with a hug, his face pinched with concern. Mom, you look exhausted. Come in, I've made coffee. He led me to their living room where sleek white furniture contrasted with colorful abstract art, some of my own paintings among them. On the mantel stood wedding photos, family vacation pictures, carefully curated images of a happy life that now felt like elaborate stage props. Mateo brought coffee and sat across from me, his intelligent eyes so like his father's studying my face. At 27, he had Raphael's strong jawline, but my sensitive nature, my artistic eye repurposed toward coding and design. What's happening, Mom? Dad's not making sense, and now you drive all the way here without explanation. Are you guys getting divorced or something? I set down my cup, forcing myself to maintain eye contact. Mateo, what I'm about to tell you is going to be painful. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll be direct. Your father and Valentina have been having an affair for 3 years. His expression froze, disbelief quickly replaced by a nervous laugh. What, Mom? That's crazy. Val barely knows Dad. They see each other at family gatherings, that's it. I reached for my bag and removed a tablet. I wish that were true. I've discovered evidence that's irrefutable. Evidence? What are you talking about, Mom? This sounds, I don't know, paranoid. The word stung, echoing Raphael's likely narrative that I was imagining things becoming unstable. I kept my voice steady. I understand your skepticism. I didn't want to believe it either, but please look at what I've found before you decide. I opened the tablet and showed him a carefully edited version of the security footage Raphael and Valentina entering our penthouse, embracing in the hallway, their intimate conversation about their Tuesday arrangement. I'd removed the bedroom footage, sparing him that particular pain, while still providing undeniable proof. Mateo's face drained of color. He stared at the screen, his hands gripping the edges so tightly his knuckles whitened. When the video ended, he sat motionless, as if frozen in time. "This can't be real," he finally whispered. "There must be some explanation." I wish there were. I showed him the photographs of the Key Biscayne condo, the lease agreement in both their names, the bank transfers. "They've been planning this for a long time, Mateo. I'm so sorry." He stood abruptly, pacing the pristine living room like a trapped animal. 3 years. That means, when we got married, she was already... I nodded, my heart breaking for him. "Yes. And all those Tuesday client meetings in Miami," his voice cracked. "There was never any design client, was there?" "No. She was meeting your father at our home while I was teaching." Mateo suddenly rushed to the bathroom. I heard him retching his body's visceral reaction to the betrayal. When he returned, his face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. "How did you find out?" he asked, his voice hollow. I explained everything. Carmen's warning, the security cameras, Javier's investigation, Elena's financial analysis. As I spoke, his expression shifted from shock to a cold anger I'd never seen in my gentle son. "The business dad's company. He's been diverting assets for months. Almost $2 million moved to offshore accounts. And he forged my signature on a second mortgage for our penthouse." Mateo sank back onto the sofa, overwhelmed. "He's stealing from you too, Jesus, Mom. What are you going to do?" "I've already done it. The business accounts are frozen. I've filed for divorce. And there may be criminal charges for the forgery." He rubbed his face with both hands, a childhood gesture that suddenly made him look young and vulnerable. "I can't believe this. Val, Dad, my whole life is a lie." I moved to sit beside him, taking his hands in mine. "Not your whole life, just this part. And now that you know the truth, you can decide how to move forward." He looked at me with a mixture of pain and admiration. "How are you so calm? If I feel this betrayed, I can't imagine how you feel after 25 years of marriage." "I've had more time to process it," I said simply. "And I've had help, Carmen Javier, my attorneys. You don't have to face this alone either." Mateo stood, suddenly pulling out his phone. "I need to call her. Right now." I gently took the phone from his hand. "Not yet. Not while you're in shock. We need to be strategic, just as they've been." "Strategic, Mom? My wife is sleeping with my father. I need to confront her now." "And say what? That you know everything. Then what? She'll deny it, make excuses, try to manipulate you. Or worse, she'll simply disappear with your father and whatever money they haven't already hidden." He blinked, surprised by my pragmatism. "What do you suggest?" "Let me call Miguel, my attorney. He's preparing documents for you too, financial protection, legal options. Before you confront Valentina, you need to secure your assets just as I did." Mateo stared at me, a new understanding dawning. "You're not just my heartbroken mother. You're, I don't know, like a general planning a counterattack." Despite everything, I smiled. "Carmen calls it strategic justice. Raphael and Valentina spent years plotting against us. We owe ourselves the same careful preparation." For the next few hours, Mateo and I worked together, calling Miguel, documenting valuable items in the townhouse, making a list of joint accounts and assets. His initial shock gradually hardened into resolve, his programmer's mind approaching the problem methodically once the emotional fog began to clear. By evening, he had transferred his personal savings to a new account, changed the passwords on all his devices, and prepared a detailed timeline of Valentina's business trips to Miami that corresponded exactly with my record of her visits to the penthouse. "She never even created fake design presentations," he said bitterly, searching her laptop while I prepared a simple dinner in their kitchen. "There's literally nothing here about clients or projects, just folders of photos of Dad and her carefully hidden behind encryption that took me about 10 minutes to crack." She really thought I was that stupid. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not stupid. Trusting. There's a difference. You believed in her because that's what people do when they love someone. The failure is hers, not yours." He looked up at me, his eyes red but dry now. "How do you do that? Find the right thing to say when your own world is falling apart." Practice, I said simply. And perspective. This is horrible, Matteo, but it's not the end. It's a painful new beginning for both of us. Late that night, as Matteo finally fell into an exhausted sleep in the guest room of his own home, unable to bear the thought of the bed he shared with Valentina, my phone lit up with a call from Raphael. I stepped onto the back patio to answer. Yes, where are you? His voice was tight, controlled panic vibrating beneath the surface. I came home and you're gone. I'm in Tampa, with our son. A sharp intake of breath. Isabella, don't do this. Don't destroy his marriage because of your suspicions about us. My suspicions, I laughed softly. Raphael, I have video of you and Valentina together, bank records of your transfers to her accounts, a copy of the lease agreement for your love nest in Key Biscayne. There are no suspicions here, only evidence. You showed Matteo? The panic was full-blown now. Of course I did. He deserved the truth. My God, Isabella, what have you done? You've ruined everything. The sheer narcissism of his response ignited a cold fury in me. No, Raphael, you ruined everything when you began sleeping with your son's wife. You ruined everything when you stole from our company. You ruined everything when you forged my signature. I'm simply ensuring you face the consequences. He'll never forgive me, Raphael whispered, the first hint of genuine regret I'd heard from him. That's between you and Matteo. My concern is making sure you and Valentina don't profit from your betrayal. What do you want? His voice hardened. Money, the penthouse, name your price. Justice isn't for sale, Raphael, but nice try. I ended the call and turned to find Matteo standing in the doorway, his face expressionless. He called you too? I asked. He nodded. 3 times while you were in the shower. I didn't answer. You'll have to talk to him eventually. I know, just not tonight. He looked up at the stars, the warm Tampa night wrapping around us. I keep thinking about all the times they were together while I was oblivious. Family dinners, my graduation, our wedding day. Was it happening even then? I couldn't lie to him. The evidence suggests it started shortly after you introduced Valentina to us 3 years ago. He winced. Before we were married. Before I proposed. She probably only said yes to get closer to him. Matteo. No, it's okay. I need to face the truth. All of it. He looked at me directly. What happens tomorrow? Valentina will return supposedly from Orlando. You'll need to decide whether to confront her immediately or wait until our legal preparations are complete. He considered this. If I confront her now, she'll warn Dad and they might still find ways to hide assets or create new problems. Possibly, but continuing to pretend might be too difficult for you. I can do it, he said, a new hardness in his voice. I wrote code for 72 hours straight once to meet a deadline. I can act normal around her for a few more days. I studied my son's face, seeing both the boy I had raised and the man forged in this crucible of betrayal. Are you sure? Yes, they spent years deceiving us. I can manage a few days of returning the favor. We stayed up late planning his approach. He would pretend ignorance, continue his normal routine while secretly working with Miguel to protect himself financially and legally. He would feign illness to explain any emotional slips, a convenient food poisoning story to account for his pallor and distraction. When I finally went to bed in their guest room, I lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of my son's home, thinking of the performance he would have to give tomorrow. My artist son had never shown interest in acting, but now he would undertake the most challenging role of his life, a man unaware that his marriage was built on lies. I finally drifted off around dawn, dreaming of Raphael and Valentina in a boat that kept springing leaks, frantically trying to bail water as they sank into a dark ocean. I woke feeling oddly refreshed, as if my subconscious had processed some of the pain while I slept. Over breakfast, Matteo seemed calmer, more centered. I talked to Miguel this morning. He's sending documents for me to sign. Once those are filed, I'm going to confront Valentina, probably tomorrow night. Are you ready for that? He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. No, but I'm ready to start ending this chapter of my life. I hugged him tightly before leaving my heart aching for the pain he was shouldering. Call me anytime, day or night. I'm here for you, mijo. I know, Mom. He managed a small smile. I'm sorry it took this for me to see how strong you really are. The drive back to Miami felt different, heavier, with shared grief, yet somehow less isolating. Matteo and I were united now, facing the betrayal together, supporting each other through the storm. When I reached the penthouse, I found a large bouquet of white lilies on the kitchen counter, Raphael's traditional apology flowers whenever we had a serious argument. The card read simply, "We need to talk, please." I threw the flowers in the trash and called Carmen. "Mateo knows everything," I reported. "He's staying calm working with Miguel on legal protection before confronting Valentina." "Good. And the business account's still frozen." "Yes. Raphael is getting desperate flowers, pleading calls the works." "Be careful," Carmen warned. "Desperate people make dangerous choices." That evening, Elena called with another bombshell. "Isabella, the forensic accounting is complete. There's a pattern of large cash withdrawals from Meridian Holdings over $400,000 in the past 6 months. I can't trace where that cash went, but it suggests they're preparing for something drastic. Like leaving the country. Possibly. The timing and amounts are consistent with people establishing new identities or preparing for a quick departure." I thanked her and immediately called Javier, who promised to intensify surveillance on both Raphael and Valentina. "If they try to flee, we'll know," he assured me. The next 24 hours unfolded like a carefully orchestrated dance. Raphael made increasingly desperate attempts to contact me. Calls, texts, even a handwritten letter slipped under the door begging for a meeting to explain everything. I maintained my silence, coordinating instead with Miguel, Elena, and Javier as they continued building our case. Mateo texted periodic updates from Tampa. Valentina had returned spinning elaborate stories about her fictional design client in Orlando. He reported maintaining his cover, though it made me physically ill to kiss her hello, knowing where she's been. The following morning, Miguel called with news. "The judge has granted our request for additional financial disclosure. Raphael must provide complete records of all accounts, including Meridian Holdings, within 5 days or face contempt charges." "He won't comply willingly," I predicted. "I know. That's why we've also filed a motion to freeze his personal accounts and restrict his passport. The hearing is tomorrow morning." Later that day, Javier sent an urgent message. "Surveillance shows R&V meeting at a bank downtown. Large safety deposit box accessed. Maybe moving assets. Sending photos now." The images showed Raphael and Valentina entering Miami First National, a bank where we had no official accounts. 2 hours later, they emerged carrying a small duffel bag. I forwarded the photos to Miguel, who promised to add them to our court filing. That evening, Mateo called, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "It's done. I confronted her." "What happened?" "She denied everything at first. Called you unstable, jealous, making things up because you were afraid of losing Dad." His voice hardened. "Then I showed her the video, the photos, the bank records. She changed. It was like watching a mask fall away." "What did she say?" "That I didn't understand. That she and Dad had a connection I could never comprehend. That she never meant to hurt me but couldn't fight their destiny together." He laughed bitterly. "Destiny. Like betraying your husband with his father is some romantic fairy tale." "Are you okay? Where is she now?" "She left to clear her head. Took a suitcase. I assume she's heading to Miami to him." He paused. "I changed the locks after she left. Moved all her stuff to the garage. I'm done, Mom. Completely done." "Do you want me to come back to Tampa?" "No. I need to be alone right now. Process all this." Another pause. "Besides, the final battle is in Miami. You need to be there when they realize they've lost everything." After hanging up, I sat on the balcony watching the Miami sunset paint the sky in dramatic oranges and purples. Tomorrow would bring the hearing on Raphael's assets and passport. Tomorrow the noose would tighten further around the life they had planned together. As darkness fell over the city, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The worst was over. Mateo knew the truth. The legal machinery was in motion, the evidence secure. Whatever happened now, Raphael and Valentina could no longer hide in the shadows, planning and plotting, while Mateo and I remained oblivious. The truth, painful as it was, had finally come to light. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected, intimate enough to hear Raphael's sharp intake of breath when he saw me already seated beside Miguel when he arrived with his attorney, a slick, expensive-looking man in a tailored suit. Valentina was noticeably absent. Raphael looked haggard, the polished architect replaced by a man who hadn't slept or shaved properly in days. He tried to approach me before the hearing began, but Miguel smoothly intercepted him, directing him back to his side of the courtroom with a few quiet words. Judge Harriet Coleman, a stern woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and penetrating eyes, called the court to order precisely at 9 a.m. She reviewed our filing requesting the freezing of Raphael's personal assets and passport restrictions with methodical attention to detail. "Mr. Morales," she finally said, looking directly at Raphael, "these are serious allegations. Financial fraud, forgery, deliberate diversion of business assets. How do you respond?" Raphael's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client categorically denies these allegations. This is an unfortunate domestic dispute being unnecessarily escalated through the courts. We request time to prepare a proper response." Judge Coleman's expression didn't change. "Mr. Dawson, your client has had ample time to respond to the emergency injunction filed last week. Instead, surveillance photos suggest he may be moving assets. The court takes this very seriously." She turned several pages in her file. "I'm particularly concerned about the forensic accountant's report indicating systematic financial misconduct and the handwriting expert's conclusion that Mrs. Morales' signature on the second mortgage was forged." Raphael leaned forward, whispering urgently to his attorney, who then addressed the court again. "Your Honor, my client is prepared to make a good faith gesture. He will voluntarily provide full financial disclosure and surrender his passport pending resolution of these matters." Miguel and I exchanged glances. This was unexpected, Raphael surrendering without a fight. Judge Coleman nodded. "Very well. The court orders complete financial disclosure within 48 hours, surrender of passport immediately, and continued freeze on all accounts associated with Morales Architectural Design and Meridian Holdings LLC pending full investigation. We'll reconvene next week to review compliance." As the hearing concluded, Raphael approached me in the hallway, his attorney hovering nervously nearby. "Isabella, please. 5 minutes, that's all I ask." Miguel started to intervene, but I held up my hand. 5 minutes, in the conference room. Once we were seated across from each other, Raphael's carefully maintained facade crumbled. "I never meant for this to happen." "Which part the affair with our son's wife, the theft from our company, the forgery, be specific, Raphael?" He winced. "All of it. It started as, I don't know, a mistake. Valentina and we met in Tampa before she even knew Mateo. When she later started dating him, we should have said something, but you decided to continue your relationship behind our backs instead." My voice remained steady. "For 3 years. I was going to end it. Many times. But then," he trailed off, "but then you started planning a future together. The offshore accounts, the Key Biscayne condo, the cash withdrawals." He looked up sharply. "You know about all of it. Every detail, every betrayal, every lie." Raphael slumped in his chair. "What happens now? Now you experience consequences. The business accounts remain frozen, the divorce proceeds, and the forgery evidence goes to the district attorney unless you agree to my settlement terms, which are full financial disclosure and return of all diverted funds. The penthouse and my 40% of the business remain mine. You keep your personal accounts and your half of our legitimate investments, and you make this as easy as possible for Mateo." Raphael stared at his hands. "And if I don't agree, then I pursue criminal charges for the forgery. I fight for everything in court, and I ensure that every client, colleague, and friend knows exactly why our marriage and business partnership ended." He was silent for a long moment. "You've thought of everything. I learned from the best. You and Valentina spent years planning your deception. I've had weeks to plan my response." Raphael looked up, his expression unreadable. "Where is she, Valentina? Have you heard from her?" "No. Mateo confronted her last night. She left with a suitcase. I assumed she was coming to you." A flicker of something concerned fear crossed his face. "She never arrived. She's not answering her phone." For the first time, a small doubt crept into my certainty. "When did you last speak with her?" "Yesterday afternoon. We argued about next steps. She wanted to leave immediately, take the money we'd set aside, start over somewhere new. I said we needed to wait, handle things properly." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "What money set aside the cash withdrawals?" He nodded reluctantly. "About $500,000, kept in a private safe at the Key Biscayne condo." I stood abruptly. "Miguel will contact your attorney with formal settlement terms. I suggest you agree quickly." Outside the courthouse, I called Javier. "Valentina is missing. She may have accessed a large amount of cash Raphael had hidden at their condo. Can you check?" On it. I'll have someone at the Key Biscayne property within 30 minutes. While waiting for Javier's update, I called Mateo. How are you doing? Numb, empty, but determined. His voice sounded stronger than yesterday. How was the hearing? The judge froze everything. Rafael seemed suddenly cooperative, which makes me suspicious. He called me this morning, Mateo said, crying, apologizing, saying he never meant to hurt me. I hung up on him. Good. Mateo, did Valentina mention where she might go if she left Jay? Why is she missing? I hesitated. Possibly. She never reached Rafael after leaving you. He thinks she might have taken money they had hidden. Mateo's bitter laugh came through the phone. Of course she did. She mentioned Argentina once said her grandmother was from Buenos Aires and she'd always felt connected to the place. But who knows if that was true? Everything she ever told me might be a lie. After we hung up, Javier called back. The Key Biscayne condo was accessed last night. The security system shows entry at 11:42 p.m. using the keypad code. The safe in the master bedroom is open and empty. She took the money and ran, I murmured, betraying Rafael just as they both betrayed us. Appears so. I've notified my contacts at Miami International. If she tries to leave the country, we'll know. But as the day progressed, there was no sign of Valentina at the airport's train stations or bus terminals. Her white Audi was discovered in the long-term parking at Fort Lauderdale International, but airport security footage showed no one resembling her boarding any flights. Rafael called repeatedly, growing increasingly frantic about Valentina's disappearance. I maintained a cool distance, reminding him that her whereabouts were no longer my concern. That evening, Carmen invited me for dinner, serving her famous paella and opening an expensive bottle of Rioja. To justice, she toasted, raising her glass, and to new beginnings. It doesn't feel like justice yet, I admitted. More like unfinished business. The legal wheels are turning. Rafael is cornered. Mateo knows the truth. That's substantial progress, Isabella. And Valentina disappearing with their money. What do you make of that? Carmen smiled slightly. Poetic justice. The betrayer betrayed. Though I admit it's an unexpected twist. We were finishing our wine when my phone rang Javier again. We found her. Or rather, the Coast Guard did. A private charter boat she hired in Key West reported engine trouble about 60 miles offshore. They're towing it back now. She had the cash with her along with a fake passport in the name Maria Torres. Cuba, Carmen murmured when I relayed this information. She was trying to reach Cuba, then likely on to South America. No extradition. What happens to her now? That depends on whether Rafael presses charges for the theft, Javier explained, and whether the authorities take an interest in the suspicious cash and fake identification. I thought of Mateo, of the pain Valentina had caused him, of the family she had nearly destroyed. Make sure the Coast Guard knows about the fake passport. Anonymous tip. Already done, Javier confirmed. The following day brought a series of rapid developments. Valentina was detained by federal authorities for attempted illegal exit from the country with large amounts of undeclared cash and fraudulent identification. Rafael, desperate to avoid his own criminal charges, agreed to my settlement terms without further negotiation. And Mateo arrived in Miami determined to be present for what he called the final reckoning. We met at Miguel's office where Rafael was signing the divorce agreement and business dissolution papers. Mateo insisted on accompanying me, standing tall beside my chair as his father entered the conference room. Rafael stopped short when he saw his son. Mateo, I didn't expect... Clearly, Mateo said, his voice cold. You didn't expect any of this, did you, Mom, finding out? Me finding out. Valentina stealing your getaway money. Your entire plan falling apart. Rafael looked genuinely shattered, the composed architect replaced by a broken man facing the consequences of his actions. I know you won't believe me, but I am truly sorry. You're right. I don't believe you. You're sorry you got caught. Mateo's voice remained steady. I came today for Mom, not for any reconciliation with you. I needed to see her strength recognized in these documents and this ending you created. Rafael signed the papers without further comment, legally surrendering the penthouse, returning control of his share of the business to me, and agreeing to repay all diverted funds from his personal accounts. In exchange, I would not pursue criminal charges for the forgery. As he stood to leave, Rafael paused beside Mateo. Son, don't, Mateo cut him off. I'm not your son today. Maybe not ever again. That's something you'll have to live with. When Raphael had gone, Miguel reviewed the signed documents with professional satisfaction. "This is an excellent outcome, Isabella. You've secured your financial future and avoided a lengthy court battle." "What about Valentina?" Mateo asked. "Will she face charges?" "Multiple federal charges, most likely. Illegal use of fraudulent identification attempting to transport undeclared currency out of the country, possibly conspiracy depending on what she reveals about the source of the money. She's looking at significant legal trouble." We left Miguel's office and walked to a nearby cafe, the Miami Sunshine, a stark contrast to the emotional darkness we'd navigated for weeks. "I filed for divorce this morning," Mateo said as we settled at an outdoor table. "Miguel referred me to a good attorney in Tampa. It should be straightforward since we have no children and limited joint assets." I studied my son's face, seeing new lines of experience etched around his eyes. "How are you really?" He considered the question carefully. "Damaged, but not destroyed. I keep thinking about what you said, that this is a painful new beginning, not an end." "It is, for both of us." "I'm thinking of moving back to Miami," he said, surprising me. "There's nothing for me in Tampa now, and several tech firms here have been recruiting me. Plus," he hesitated, "I'd like to be closer to you, learn from your strength." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'd like that very much." Of healing. Raphael moved to Chicago, accepting a position with a rival architectural firm. The divorce was finalized without further drama, the financial settlements executed according to our agreement. Valentina pled guilty to federal charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 18 months in prison. Mateo relocated to Miami, renting an apartment downtown, while establishing himself at a promising tech startup. We had dinner together weekly, sometimes joined by Carmen, who had become something of a surrogate grandmother to him. The business, renamed Bella Morales Design, flourished under my sole direction. I hired a talented young architect to handle the technical aspects Raphael had managed, while I focused on the creative vision and client relationships. The West Shore project was completed successfully, bringing in substantial revenue that helped offset the financial damage Raphael had caused. One Tuesday afternoon, exactly 9 months after Carmen first intercepted me at the elevator with her fateful question, I found myself back in that same spot, returning from my art class with a portfolio of student work to review. Isabella, Carmen called elegant as always in a coral linen suit. "Perfect timing. I was just thinking of you." We rode the elevator together, her wise eyes studying my face. "You look well, peaceful." "I feel peaceful," I admitted. "For the first time in a long time." "Any word from Raphael?" "A birthday card from Mateo last month, returned unopened." I shrugged. "Some wounds may never heal completely." Carmen nodded. "And the business?" "Growing. We just won a commission for a sustainable housing development in Coral Gables. Very prestigious." "Congratulations," she smiled warmly. "I knew you would not merely survive, Isabella. You would thrive." When the elevator reached my floor, Carmen surprised me by stepping out with me. "I have something for you. A small gift to mark an anniversary of sorts." In my newly redecorated penthouse gone were Raphael's dark leather furnishings, replaced by light, airy pieces that reflected my artistic sensibility. Carmen presented me with a small, wrapped package. Inside was a beautiful silver picture frame containing a photograph I didn't recognize. Looking closer, I realized it was from the charity auction 9 months ago, me standing proudly beside my paintings, smiling confidently at the camera. "I had a friend take it," Carmen explained. "That night, watching you handle the auction with such grace while carrying the knowledge of Raphael's betrayal, I knew then you would be all right." I hugged her tightly. "Thank you for everything, Carmen. For the warning that day at the elevator. For your guidance. Your friendship." "I simply pointed out what you already sensed. You did the hard work yourself." She gestured around the transformed apartment. "And created something beautiful from the ruins." After she left, I placed the framed photo on my desk in the sunlit studio Raphael had once designed for me, now completely reimagined in shades of blue and gold. Around me stood new paintings, vibrant, powerful works that had emerged from the pain and renewal of the past year. My phone chimed with a text from Mateo. "Dinner tonight, bringing someone I'd like you to meet. Just a friend, nothing serious. But she's an art teacher too. Thought you might have things in common." I smiled, texting back, "I'd love that. 7 p.m. Outside, the Miami sunset painted the sky in dramatic oranges and purples, the same colors that had witnessed my darkest moments, now illuminating a different landscape, still complex, still challenging, but undeniably mine. I opened the balcony doors, letting the warm breeze flow through the apartment. Tuesdays, once marked by secret betrayals, had become just another day in my reclaimed life. The secret of the Tuesdays had nearly destroyed us, but the truth had ultimately set us free. Not a perfect ending, real life rarely offers those, but a just one where consequences found their rightful owners, where deception gave way to clarity, where a woman others had underestimated discovered just how powerful she truly was. I looked out over the city, my city, as twilight settled over Miami. This was not the life I had planned all those years ago when Raphael and I left Spain with dreams of building something together. It was something entirely different, something entirely my own. And it was enough, more than enough. It was a victory.